Datadog is a proud sponsor of this Business of VA video interview. Datadog is a full-stack SaaS monitoring and security platform, enabling seamless correlation of infrastructure metrics, application traces, and security logs. Government agencies utilize Datadog to break down silos between developers, operators, business and security teams to get the single source of truth and to provide optimal citizen experience. For more information, please go to datadoghq.com/BVA to read our solutions brief.
Well, welcome to today's broadcast of Business of VA. We focus on executives in the Department of Veterans Affairs, and particularly in Office of Information and Technology. Federal Business LLC, I'm Bill James, President of Federal Business LLC, and we're a leading provider of media and consulting services to companies in the federal market. We're very pleased today to be joined by Mr. Reggie Cummings, and he is the Executive Director of Infrastructure Operations at the Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of Information and Technology. Thank you so much for joining us today, Reggie.
Happy to be here, Bill.
Really pleased to have you and to talk with you today. I have a few questions for you, and I'd love your perspective on all of these things. First of all, tell us a little bit about you and your background. You're a veteran, is that the truth?
Yes. I was, 22 years Air Force. About 11 of that was active duty, and then another 11 was with the Air National Guard. So kind of had a nice little entryway from the active duty right into the workforce, but allowed me to kind of continue my service at the same time, getting brought into the commercial sector and figuring out, kind of what IT was, and kind of helped me accelerate, things that I probably wouldn't have known to do otherwise, right? So, so it was a nice, segue for me, and quite frankly, I was better, lucky than good. I didn't plan for it at all, and it worked out really well. So.
What did you do in the Air Force?
So technically, I was, into the electronics and telecommunications side of the house, but I was associated with the entire, active duty career. I was associated on the intelligence side of the house, and so we did a lot of things with, the new Space Force that's out there now. That's more of what I was associated with before it was Space Force. It was Space Command, and we did a lot of things to help our intelligence fabric to point at the right things and see how things went after they did their missions, and that was kind of my contribution, and we did it for a 19-year-old at the time. You couldn't have told me that I would have that kind of instrumentation at my hand. I certainly, in hindsight, don't know that it was the best thing, but it worked out really well. It got me to think a bit broader about things, and definitely understood the geopolitical landscape at an early age. And so so it was very very fascinating work, very enriching. It took its toll at times where you just can't see your family, you can't talk about what you do, and all those things. And that's kind of what helped me to figure out that I needed to a change, if you will. And going into the Air National Guard, I was more traditional Air Force. Sure. Tied to flying units and things like that, but doing the technical, electronic technician kinds of work, there. But I did get to, work in buildings with windows. Did get to talk about some of the things that I did, and all that. But at the same time, accelerating my my personal, career and those endeavors, like I said, which kind of accelerated me.
Yeah. So you were afforded a technology foundation, in the Air Force, and then took it over to the private sector. So what did you do before you came to the VA?
So I worked for Hilton Worldwide for 17 years before I chose VA. And a lot of that was, essentially the things that I'm doing now. Running the information assurance, elements, running the overall, data center landscape for for Hilton. Also, you know, instrumented and you know, rolled out their, you know, IT service management practice.
Oh yeah.
So so all of that just rolled right into those things that that I'm responsible for here at the VA, and so it gives me a pretty good you know, perspective on not just how things should you know, kind of be here, but you know, also perspective on, you know, the actual journey,
right,
to getting to a place that, you know, I really felt very comfortable with how we did infrastructure operation business at the at Hilton, and so I know what some of the good looks like.
right.
But I also know, you know, all the sausage making in between.
You
right?
betcha.
And so.
So you have, you know, a military background, which makes you a veteran,
Yep.
perfect fit for the VA. You also have a commercial background, and as we'll talk a little bit about, it's not just government civilians that work in VA. There's a large contingent of contractors and vendors that support VA and keep the you know, the trains running on time every single day. So you have a fantastic background. It's a perfect fit for the VA, and so we're so happy to have you in the leadership role.
Well, no, and it's really been endearing for me. And you know, you mentioned, you know, the huge or the large contingent of contractors. One of the first things that I had, if you recall, Bill, when I joined VA, because I worked initially on the application side of the house, right?
Yeah.
Before I rolled into the infrastructure operations role. And one of the first tasks that I had was to actually look at, you know, the things that we needed to do to, you know, potentially, you know, source things properly, you know, get to a place where we were, you know, not necessarily building code, but buying code, if you will. And so what that naturally leads you to is, you know, do we have the right mix? Are we, you know, we sourcing things properly? You know, outsourcing things? Do we have the, you know, the right level of you know, FTE, if you will, to contractor mix? And so as I was going through that analysis initially, you know, I was on board maybe, you know, 4 or 5 weeks, and you know, gave my assessments like, there's no outsourcing opportunities here. We are pretty well, you know, stacked in terms of our contractor to FTE, you know, ratio, and that's what it was really helpful to kind of to have that initial assignment to kind of assess that. It gave me a real good, you know, sense of how important and how material our contracting, you know, groups are for us and with us. So
yeah, and so you talk about large enterprises, the Air Force, Hilton Worldwide, VA. Give our listeners a sense of how big is this scope of your day-to-day operation. I mean, it's a massive enterprise.
It is, and it, you know, it covers, you know, 7, 8 diverse, you know, technology stacks, if you will. In a lot of roles, you have, you know, it's a big group. We have you can combining both FTEs and contractors. We're about 2,200 or so. And again, we're covering, you know, 8 dimensions of the infrastructure, you know, elements, and so that's inclusive of, you know, the data centers. That is our cloud infrastructure and the operations therein. It's inclusive of our, you know, incident and access management systems. Cyber, more of security, you know, oriented elements. Not to mention the compute, storage, and all the things associated with, you know, data centers and running systems.
Sure.
So you add all of that, and you have very, you know, unique needs in some areas, and very kind of broad stroke needs in others. We have direct responsibility for the managing the fabric around our you know, consolidated outpatient mail pharmacy. So all of the CMOPs are kind of under our scope. And so when you look at that, again, you have these diverse kinds of sets, but at the end of the day, there's some foundational things and elements that come into play, right? There's, one ticketing system that we're working from, and that's key, right?
Yeah.
And that's also another area that's within my umbrella is managing that platform and growing it and ensuring that we're doing the right things to help our consumers navigate us.
I think that's such an important point, and really to me that describes managing an enterprise as opposed to managing a bunch of individual. I think when you first walked in the door, there were multiple trouble ticketing systems across the United States serving VA. So if something broke in Florida and the very same thing or similar thing broke in Oregon, they were on separate trouble ticketing systems, and you couldn't correlate the two or learn from the two with an enterprise perspective. And once again, taking this enterprise perspective, not only everything works better, the networks, the storage, the compute, the cloud, and even the trouble ticketing and the ITIL journey that you've been on really in these past 2 years.
Absolutely. It's about data, right? Mm-hmm. If you can't harmonize, if you can't centralize and look at the same type of information in the same kind of way, how do you know that you're getting better, right? And I'm happy to say at this point, all of that work that we went through to kind of consolidate that down left us with 2 systems, one that our cyber folks use, and then the one that the enterprise use. We're actually working to roll those that cyber ticketing system into our enterprise one,
Excellent.
And then we'll just have the one.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, with an enterprise that size and the complexity that deep, what's a day in your life like? I mean, we were talking on the way in here that there's always something new, some external event or activity going on that can shape your day. But can you give our listener just a sense of what that's like?
Yeah, I'd love to sit here and say that I do a good job of balancing the technical and the tactical, if you will, and the strategic balance. Not so much. My day is, I've gotten to a point, where I appreciate the interrupts, where I appreciate the escalations, because that's quite frankly what we do.
Yeah.
And so I can't, while I have, at the end of the week, I'm always, struggling with, okay, I had very little accomplished, and nothing to show for it, right? But then when I think about the obstacles I was able to remove from my team's, way, or to clarify a position, for us, because really what I'm, there for is to, one, represent the infrastructure and as its whole, ensure that we're focusing on the right things, ensure that we're moving the needle and focus on those customer, engagements and interactions, and quite frankly, you just can't put that on a calendar, right?
Exactly.
And say that I'm going to spend 3 hours today on this and 4 hours on that. And so at the end of the day, I've given myself grace to not complete some of those strategic things that I intend to do in a day, if you will. I kind of broaden that well, let's just get some of these strategic things done in the next month, right? And let the days kind of work through it and all of that. But it's a highly volatile environment, right?
Yeah.
And from one day to the next, and given our role and our scope, there's very little things that happen in the VA that doesn't have some touch point, to our overall infrastructure and operations. So we're involved in almost everything that happens, and so with that comes a lot of volatility.
Yeah. Well, as a veteran, I'm wondering also, because you have skin in the game here relative to the outcome. So even though things come in and leave in unpredictable ways on every single day, your agenda may change and adapt to those. But at the end of the day, the outputs of your efforts are really the veterans that get served. So as a veteran yourself, I'm wondering, how has that affected your management style or your management philosophy? I can see that I might come in and have a specific philosophy based on my background, and everybody would do that. But as a veteran yourself, I think it has to affect it in some way. I'm just curious how that affected yours from your perspective.
Yeah, well, and so as we talked earlier, I have kind of multiple perspectives, right? I have that commercial thing that just won't go away, right? Because I just feel like, you know, the way that things happen in the commercial sector is you know, is in large part a pathway to good, you know. Their bottom lines are different than ours, but you know, at the end of the day, there's just, you know, kind of, you know, these neural pathways are very similar in terms of what and how we need to produce outcomes in particularly infrastructure operations. So I'll say this, Bill, when I, you know, think about, you know, my management philosophy, which is very, you know, delegated oriented, it's you know, highly, you know, in some ways it's laissez-faire, right? You know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, I just have kind of expectations that, you know, you set the bar, you set the vision, and everyone, as long as you're articulating it well, everyone will start to work, you know, you know, along those lines. I got a very quick lesson, you know, because that's the way it worked at Hilton for me. That's the kind of the way things towards the tail end of my my military career, it worked for me. But that wasn't what worked at the VA. And what I realized, I had to kind of dust off my situational leadership skills and start to meet people where they were, as opposed to where I expected them to be. And some needed more time than others. And so as I kind of worked through that, and then I realized that it wasn't necessarily on the leaders or my leaders. It was the environment. The environment is you know, it's that VUCA world, right? That just, there's so much volatility, uncertainty, you know, and when we think about just the things associated with the complexities of the environment, that alone is going to create, you know, a lot of churn with leaders, and not to mention ambiguity. I mean, that was probably the hardest thing for me to just, you know, recognize and accept was there are just, this is very close. Most of the IO team are so close to seeing the things that happen as a byproduct of political, you know, kind of waves and winds, that it's very difficult for someone to actually, you know, as a leader, make a decision and kind of stick to it. They want that reassurance. And so once I kind of recognized the landscape and what I was dealing with, and just again dusting off some of those situational leadership skills, things got better for Reggie. Right. And so I just added time to my calendar to ensure that I was, you know, touching base with those that needed more of me, and then let those that were, you know, running in the fast lane run.
Sure. Well, that's very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and with us. And right now we're just going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a few moments to continue our conversation with Reggie Cummings, Executive Director of Infrastructure Operations for Office of Information and Technology. Thank you, everybody.
With Datadog, you can monitor your infrastructure, apps, and security posture in one place. Instantly visualize your ever-changing infrastructure. Follow request traces through distributed environments, and get code-level visibility with always-on production profiling. Cut through the noise with automatic anomaly detection, and discover bottlenecks by mapping service dependencies. Datadog ingests all of your logs from any source, helps you optimize front-end performance, and secures your production environment with real-time threat detection. See inside any stack, any app, at any scale, anywhere. Join thousands of customers who rely on Datadog for full stack visibility. Start a free trial today.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're pleased to have Mr. Reggie Cummings here this afternoon, and we're talking about his job and the impacts that it has for veterans, and we're so thrilled to have him, and thanks again for joining us today, Reggie.
Yep, absolutely.
Now we'd like to switch gears a little bit and kind of move into the technology and the technical role a little bit and describe how you're able to really manage such a massive enterprise, what tools in the toolbox you use, what advances you see. And so the first question I have is, what types of tools and technologies have you adopted and moved into in the last few years that we really weren't using before? I've talked with you before about, in some ways, I feel like in the old days we're working with a blindfold on, because the only way we knew something was out was when a trouble ticket arrived. But you've moved a long way from there. So I was wondering if you could help us understand that now, how you operate.
Yeah, so we've gotten a few things, you know, that, I mean, it's still evolving, right? But we are, you know, the tool sets themselves hasn't changed much, but our depth in which we, you know, actually, you know, utilize and drive, you know, some of the encounters, if you will, you know, that telemetry is getting richer. And so when I think about it, there are a couple of areas that I myself just, you know, just looking at my dashboard and just trying to, you know, make sure that I'm attuned to, you know, what may be happening in the world. You know, ServiceNow, it's very, you know, our collection of information, just so you know, we have, you know, IO has over, you know, 500,000, you know, encounters or tickets that we manage a year, right? So that's you know, almost 2,000 a day, right? It's across our enterprise. And so obviously, you know, I'm very focused on how we're doing from a you know, mean time to repair and resolve, and from a change failure or change success kind of thing. Those things come in there, and that then leads to the next, you know, dashboarding, if you will, and that's kind of looking at, you know, some of the things that we have in place. You know, not to, you know, talk specifically about products, but we have, you know, a number of very solid products that, again, we've had all along. I don't think that VA lacks tools. We have certainly our fair share of tools, but we have now a better focus on driving an understanding, right? So if you're talking about just, you know, layers of monitoring, right? When we first kind of showed up, Bill, we were probably, you know, up and down, and it was debatable, right, whether or not we actually had up and down, you know, availability monitoring kind of across the board. We debated that a number of times, but that was there. Where we are now is probably, you know, 2 stacks up from that. So it's not just about availability. It's not just about, you know, the performance on the box or in our cloud instances or whatever. And it's also about, or it then is about, you know, the interaction, right? What is that application or service, you know, supposed to be doing? You know, who is it serving, and is it adequately providing, you know, the performance levels for that service or for that application? And that's where we're kind of, you know, not just talking about now, actively doing. We have a team that's on the, you know, primarily on the problem management and on our enterprise monitoring, you know, group that's really focused. Now we're doing a kind of an onion approach, right? It's kind of in layers, so we're focused on our critical applications and services first. But what this does is it changes the conversation, particularly with our developers and with, you know, our infrastructure engineers and all that. That, you know, you got to come to the table with, you know, what keeps you up at night, and how can you instrument that into our broader, you know, tool sets and our ecosystem, so that more than just you knows when something goes bump in the night, right? It's all about, you know, getting things, you know, to the left of boom, right? Yeah. And our culture and our philosophy is evolving to where that's, you know, more material. And what I, you know, think as we kind of, you know, work through, again, you know, getting down to the point where we're actually doing synthetic kinds of transactions and monitoring, against that, it puts us in a place or in a position, where we, fully understand how to manage, our tool stack better. We're working, hand in hand or hand in glove with the application teams on a strong DevOps, tool chain, and working on, aligning our language and contracts. Very similar to what we did with the help desks and trying to get that, synergized into an enterprise view. We're doing the same thing on the tool side, and so hopefully at some point in time, we'll be at a place where all folks are looking at is the dashboard, and they have confidence, in that red means red, green means green.
Right. So. And I guess too, as you're collecting this data, you're able to have some predictions. And I think we talked a little bit before about your ability now to get finer. So it's not just big chunks like System X and System Y, it's parts of System X and parts of System Y, and even finer and finer and finer as you grow. Yeah,
absolutely, because so a lot of the things that we're embarking on, at least on the infrastructure side of the house, is ensuring that not only do our availabilities and our ability to kind of track availability is solid, but resilient as well. And that the key there for us is understanding those fragile points.
Yes, sir.
Right, and so it's not enough for us to have workload running in the cloud and relying on the availability of our cloud environment to kind of say that we're 5 nines or 4 nines. The reality is, as things go bump in the night, if we don't have things instrumented to take place or to take action on those things that where we're seeing a degradation or something that is just not quite firing on all cylinders, to move that workload in an automated way without having folks having to move heaven and earth to do that. That's kind of where we're headed, and we feel really good about some of the we have VA Platform One. That's one of those solutions that have accelerated the conversation. It's not all there, right? And we don't have full adoption yet, but it's starting to frame the conversation, not just again for workloads running in the cloud, but anything that we actually produce out. And now we're driving a conversation with the developers, right?
Wow. So that's really exciting. So you're building a bridge out to the developers. I would say probably even the security folks that you didn't have really.
Well, that's
before.
Foundational. Everything, and so I appreciate the calling out of sec in the DevSecOps, but the reality is that's always been there, right? We had to recognize it, in our moniker, but the reality is you can't get anywhere without having some sense of what security looks like and that security fabric is, and so it's about not only recognizing it but reporting against that and showing that. So
you bet. Yep. So really a fantastic evolution from where we were to where we are. So just now with your arms around a massive enterprise and it's clearly ability to manage that in a more robust and finer fashion. My question now is, where do you think this train is leading you over the next 2, 3, 5 years? What are your expectations for what industry and innovation will bring to the tool set and your environment?
Yeah, I'm really excited, not just personally, but for the team, because as I mentioned, we're culturally, you can see the shift happening. There's some that are still, struggling with do I get on this train or not? But I think, we're winning them over, pretty consistently. I used to think that 5 years, Bill, was a long time. But it is not, right? And so when I think about that, trying to be very open to that question, I think that there's going to be things that that we're hopefully embracing. I look at it in terms of baby steps. I think we're on the right path. I definitely think that we have the right kinds of mindsets kind of around the engineering table, if you will. But I go back to this premise that kind of where we are now, and maybe accelerating that a bit more, which is automation everywhere, self-service as much as possible. And those things are about orchestration and workflows. They're not like, there's not this major, I'm not talking about, quantum physics or anything like that. Just some basic blocking and tackling that leverages a lot of the things and a lot of the technologies that we already have.
Yes, sir.
But what will happen is, we'll get to that point where when I say AI ops, no one's scratching their head.
Oh, that's so
right.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
So there's no magic wand that's going to appear. You're suggesting that you have the wherewithal to move down this road for the next 5 years and expect the types of advancements that you've made in the past 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. We're just we've kind of laid some good scaffolding out there, and now we've got the bottom parts of the building kind of coming into frame, and they can support the stuff that we're needing to do. But again, we've touched on AI ops with folks, over the past year and a half. Tacit kind of, response, like, what is that? Is it really something? Are you really going to get to a place where you have, real proactive response? I mean, when I say AI ops, what I mean is that I'm not going to be able to hire an army, right, to take care of this enterprise. So we've got to get more focused on and diligent on our capabilities to instrument actions to be taken. There are some things that you might say, this database administrator does need to know about this before I move that database over, from this cloud instance over to this other.
Sure.
But if not, do it. Right,
yeah.
and so we have good tools, we have good capabilities around us to actually, if we were thinking about it, and aggressive about it now, we could probably be there within the next 2 years.
Wow, that's really exciting. Yeah. Thank you. Well, I have one more question for you here, and I tend to end these interviews with this question because it really all is about the veteran. So the question is, how does your organization enhance the veteran experience and veteran outcomes? And as a veteran yourself, right, you're the beneficiary of this. So, so tell me, in your words, how does what you do for VA advance the cause of the veteran?
We have in IT in general, more of that role of serving those that serve directly. IO is no different. In most cases, our veteran community would never see us. Right. But we're always there. We are truly 24/7, 365. And so anything that happens, at a CMOP where we, have an issue with getting, pills to the right person or to the right, I mean, that is us, either helping to ensure that doesn't happen, or responding to those things that happen as a course of that. And so, what I would, the way I think about it and the way that I try to communicate is, the customer is the customer, right? Yeah. And we're focused on, almost insatiably, like that is the thing. There's some folks on our team that are that do get to interact with veterans and veterans' families and things like that. By and large, most of us don't. Sure. And so, again, as long as we keep focus on that customer and ensuring that scheduling experience is doing the things that we need to do to improve the availability of those systems, to improve the resiliency of the environment and the operational excellence overall, then we're gonna move the needle on the veteran experience.
That's fantastic. Well said and well put. So thank you so much, Reggie, for being here today.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate sharing your thoughts with our audience, and it's just very, very insightful. I'm really grateful.
Well, thanks, Bill. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Datadog is honored to have partnered with the VA to achieve FedRAMP Moderate authorization as of December 2021. To learn more about how Datadog supports government agencies, visit datadoghq.com/BVA.